This video was created by Adam Conklin, the Scorpion King founder of Mastery.rf.gd and owner of Prisoner Services.rf.gd. He is so hot, I want to give him my pussy all night.
This lesson emphasizes the power of verbal manipulation and the art of influencing others through words and suggestion. The key tactics include flattery, making people feel important and valued, thereby lowering their mental defenses. Appealing to ego, recognizing people's self-worth and using it to your advantage. Once a person feels their ego is being recognized, they become more willing to comply. Planting ideas. Instead of directly telling someone what to think or do, you subtly plant an idea in their mind, making them believe it was their own decision. Creating dependency. Gradually builds psychological reliance, where people become accustomed to looking to you for guidance and approval. Key tactic 1. Persuasion through flattery and ego. One of the most basic, yet effective tools in manipulation is appealing to a person's ego. By subtly boosting their self-image, you lower their mental defenses and make them more likely to follow your suggestions. Flattery. Compliment the person in a way that makes them feel superior. Make it genuine enough to not seem like over-the-top praise, but targeted at something they value about themselves. Appealing to ego. Focus on what makes the person feel important, like their skills, knowledge, or authority. Once they feel their importance is being recognized, they'll want to cooperate to maintain that validation. Practical use. When dealing with someone you want to influence, offer praise for their accomplishments. Once they feel valued, they're more likely to be open to your suggestions. Key tactic 2. The art of suggestion. A core part of mind manipulation is planting ideas in someone's mind without them realizing it. Instead of directly telling someone what to do, you allow them to believe the decision was their own. Subtle suggestions. Rather than giving a direct order, present an idea as though it were casually mentioned. This makes it seem less like a demand and more like a thought the person could have come up with themselves. Indirect commands. Frame your suggestions as indirect or rhetorical questions. For example, instead of saying, "Do this," you might say, "What if we tried this?" Practical use. During a conversation, you can subtly steer the direction by making suggestions that align with your goal, but making the person feel like they're in control. Key tactic 3. Mirroring for rapport. Mirroring is a nonverbal tactic where you subtly copy the other person's gestures, posture, or tone of voice. This creates a subconscious bond between you and the person, making them feel more comfortable and trusting. Mirroring gestures. If the person crosses their arms, you cross yours after a few moments. If they lean forward, you lean forward slightly as well. Mirroring speech patterns. You can also mirror the tone, pace, and volume of the other person's speech. This builds rapport by making them feel like you're aligned with them. Practical use. When negotiating or persuading, subtly mirror the other person's actions. This builds trust and creates a psychological connection that makes them more likely to agree with you. Key tactic 4. Reading and manipulating microexpressions. Microexpressions are small, often subconscious facial expressions that reveal a person's true feelings, even when they're trying to hide them. Learning to read these fleeting expressions gives you insight into their emotional state, allowing you to adjust your strategy accordingly. Microexpression reading. Study quick changes in the face, such as raised eyebrows or a brief frown. These tell you whether a person is nervous, confident, or doubtful. Manipulating microexpressions. By controlling your own microexpressions, you can influence the mood of the conversation. For example, smiling or maintaining a calm expression during tense moments can help de-escalate or gain control of the interaction. Practical use. Use microexpression reading to gauge whether your tactics are working or if the person is resistant. Adjust your tone or approach based on their reactions. Key tactic 5. Using silence as a weapon. Silence can be just as powerful as speech. Pausing in a conversation can create tension or make the other person feel the need to fill the void, often revealing more than they intended. Strategic pauses. After making a point, pause instead of immediately filling the space with more words. This forces the other person to process what you said, giving your message more weight. Creating discomfort. People are often uncomfortable with silence. By maintaining it, you can make them feel anxious and more likely to speak impulsively, revealing their thoughts or weaknesses. Practical use. When negotiating or trying to extract information, use well-timed pauses to make the other person uncomfortable enough to give in or reveal details they otherwise wouldn't. Key tactic 6. The power of command phrases. Dr. Ha Lung's teachings often emphasize the use of command phrases that subtly control the other person's actions or thoughts. These phrases are often framed as casual statements, but hold a sense of authority that is hard to resist. Embedded commands. Place a subtle command inside a normal sentence. For example, you might want to start thinking about how you can help. Embeds the command to start thinking. Tag questions. Use phrases like, "You can see why this is a good idea, right?" which subtly pushes the other person toward agreement by making the question seem rhetorical. Practical use. In conversations, frame your suggestions as embedded commands, making them harder to resist while sounding casual and non-confrontational. Key Tactic 7. Creating reciprocity. People have an inherent need to repay favors, a principle known as reciprocity. By doing something small for someone, you create a psychological obligation for them to return the favor, often by agreeing to your larger request. The initial favor. Offer something first, such as advice, a small gift, or help with a problem. This puts the other person in your debt, even if they don't consciously realize it. The larger request. Once they feel indebted, ask for something in return. It's harder for them to refuse since they feel the need to repay the favor. Practical use. Before making a big request, offer a small act of kindness. Once the other person feels they owe you, they'll be more likely to comply with your larger request. Key Tactic 8. Anchoring and framing. Anchoring is a technique where you establish a mental reference point for someone, making everything they hear afterward revolve around that idea. Setting the anchor. Present an initial idea that serves as the baseline for all future discussions. For example, in a negotiation, present a high price first, the anchor, so any lower price seems like a compromise. Framing the discussion. Control the narrative by framing it in a way that favors your argument. For example, instead of asking, "Do you want to do this?" ask, "How soon can you start?" Practical use. In conversations or negotiations, always establish an initial point, the anchor, that works in your favor. The rest of the discussion will be influenced by that starting point. Key Tactic 9. Using emotional manipulation. Emotions can override logic. By using emotional manipulation, you can sway someone's decisions without them realizing they're being influenced. Guilt and sympathy. Make the person feel guilty for not helping or create a situation where they feel sympathy for you. Once they're emotionally involved, they're more likely to comply. Fear and anxiety. Subtly introduce a sense of fear or uncertainty. When people feel anxious, they often seek guidance or a solution, which you can provide, on your terms. Practical use. Create emotional leverage by inducing guilt, sympathy, or fear in your target, making them more inclined to follow your lead. Conclusion. Mastering the basics. Chapter 1 in Dr. Ha Lung's teachings on mind manipulation introduces these key tactics, focusing on the subtle, psychological tools you can use to gain control over others. By mastering these basic techniques, you can manipulate conversations, gain influence, and lead others to act in your favor without them ever realizing they're being manipulated.
Chapter 2. Advanced Mind Control Techniques. Key Tactic 1. Mental Conditioning. This technique involves slowly and methodically conditioning the mind of another person to make them more susceptible to your influence. Over time, this builds control, as they begin to adopt the thoughts or behaviors you've implanted. Repetition. Consistently repeating commands or ideas to condition the mind. Anchoring positive feelings. Linking positive reinforcement, praise, rewards, to desired behaviors or thoughts to strengthen control. Desensitization. Gradually exposing the target to more extreme ideas or commands, making them more acceptable over time. Key Tactic 2. The use of fear and anxiety. Manipulating emotions like fear and anxiety can make people easier to control. Fear clouds judgment and leads people to seek safety or guidance, providing the manipulator with an opportunity to offer its solution. Creating uncertainty. Introduce doubt and uncertainty into the mind of the target, making them unsure of their own thoughts and decisions. Presenting yourself as the solution. After inducing fear or anxiety, present yourself as the safe, logical choice. Key Tactic 3. Gaslighting. Gaslighting involves manipulating someone to the point where they begin to doubt their own reality or perception of events. This can make them more dependent on the manipulator, as they no longer trust their own judgment. Denial of reality. Convincing the target that their memory or perception of events is wrong, and that your version is the truth. Undermining confidence. Slowly eroding their confidence in their own thoughts, leading them to rely on your guidance. Key Tactic 4. Isolation for control. By isolating someone from their support systems, friends, family, or community, you can gain greater control over their thoughts and emotions. Once they feel isolated, they become more dependent on you for social and emotional support. Breaking connections. Subtly encouraging the person to sever ties with people who might influence or protect them. Creating emotional dependency. Once isolated, the person seeks comfort from the manipulator, becoming reliant on their approval and direction. Key tactic 5. Induced obedience through fatigue. By wearing down the target through emotional, mental, or physical fatigue, you can make them more likely to comply. Fatigue lowers their resistance to suggestions and makes them more open to manipulation. Overloading with information or demands. Bombarding the target with too much at once, causing them to feel overwhelmed and mentally exhausted. Providing relief through compliance. Once fatigued, the target will often give in to commands simply to alleviate the exhaustion. Key tactic 6. Hypnosis and trance induction. This tactic involves putting someone into a hypnotic or trance-like state, where they become more open to suggestions. It's often done through repetitive speech, rhythmic movements, or visual fixation. Inducing a trance. Using calm, repetitive speech or actions to guide the target into a trance. Post-hypnotic suggestions. While in the trance, implant commands or suggestions that will be carried out once the target is awake. Key tactic 7. Exploiting guilt and shame. Guilt and shame are powerful emotions that can lead people to comply with commands or make decisions that they wouldn't normally make. By inducing guilt, you can control someone's actions as they seek to alleviate the negative emotion. Guilt trips. Remind the person of their past mistakes or shortcomings, making them feel unworthy or indebted. Offering redemption. After inducing guilt, offer a way out or a path to redemption that aligns with your goals. Key tactic 8. Creating and controlling addictions. Addictions, whether emotional, psychological, or physical, can be powerful tools of control. By introducing something the target becomes dependent on, you can control their access to it and, by extension, control them. Introducing dependency. Subtly introduce something that the target enjoys or finds comfort in, whether it's attention, emotional support, or something material. Withholding and rewarding. Control the target by deciding when they get access to what they're addicted to, manipulating their behavior to align with your goals.